Hello and welcome to Introduction to Philosophy at Georgetown University. My name is Professor James Olson, and I'll be excited to spend these next 8 weeks with you looking at a subject that I am very passionate about. I hope that each of you have had a chance to go to the introduction discussion board and introduce yourself with your 3 photos and a video. You can also look at mine there, in which I talk a little bit more about my personal life. Academically, let me let you know that I specialize in the areas of phenomenology, philosophy of perception, and environmental ethics, although fortunately I get a chance to teach a whole range of subjects. One thing I want to bring up at the beginning is that this is an online class. Now, you're seeing this in the literature, you already know this yourself. Taking an online course is different than taking a live course. In fact, I'll use a quick analogy. Philosophy in the ancient world was very embodied. It was very much a culture, a practice, a lifestyle. You gathered together with other people like yourself who were part of the same school of philosophy. You lived a certain way. You might dress a certain way. You were certainly culturally marked off from others. Big shift that happened post the ancient world, kind of in the last 2,000 years. Philosophy has been less a school, a lifestyle, and more of an individual thing. So you can see Rembrandt's famous picture of a philosopher is underneath this staircase by a window, and he's thinking deeply. He's got his books. He's by himself. Right? That's how we might think of it. You know, today we've got philosophy professors. We gather together at the university not because we're all deciding to live together the same way, but because we're studying the same subject together. So there's a bit of a difference that happened between the way that philosophy was studied in the ancient world. We read about Socrates going to the agora or to the gymnasium and, there in his toga and drinking wine and questioning people, and the way that it has been practiced for the last few millennia. Likewise, we've got a similar shift in terms of what was going on in the classroom, where we're able to see each other face to face, ask questions, get things in real time very, very easily, have the kind of community and human interaction and all the psychological effects that go with it, and taking something online where you're by yourself, you're not meeting people in the real world. We're not going to be having synchronous conversations unless you come and visit my office hours, these kinds of things. So there's a bit of a shift. There are goods that were lost when we went from gathering together in a lifestyle or in a culture to merely studying it on an academic level the way that we do in the university. Likewise, there are things lost when we go from a classroom setting to an online setting, but there are also great benefits. Undoubtedly, you're aware of some of those, and that's why you're taking this online class. But please be aware that you're going to have to work a little harder. My main message in all of this is that you're going to need to be disciplined in how you approach this course. You're going to need to stay on top of things. I won't be there in person. You're not going to be meeting with your other peers. You're not going to be necessarily reminding each other when you see each other down at the cafe that you've got an assignment due. So be aware of that. Now, to help you get oriented, you've gone through the orientation, but real quickly, let me just lay out for you Module 1, what we're doing here, so that you can hopefully be kind of comfortable with the way that these things will go about. You've already done the orientation. Hopefully, you've already looked at or done the introduction. Now, one thing to point out right off the bat is that Unit 1 is a lot easier than the other units. Less reading, less work. Now, that's on purpose so that you can have a chance to be comfortable getting oriented in this whole online sphere. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to read Simon Blackburn's introduction to the book Think. So please take a look at that. And note that if this were another unit, you might also write a quick summary of that chapter and pose 3 questions. You'll need to do that for 2 readings on every module, not this first module. But you're going to read the introduction to Think. Now, I've got a video lecture that goes along with that called Introducing Philosophy. I'll be talking a little bit about what Simon Blackburn talked about. I will also be talking about some other areas and aspects of philosophy. Then we've got an exercise. It's not just that you're going to hear me and what I say. I'm going to give you a chance immediately to go out and apply. Right? Okay, so I've learned now what philosophy is. Let me see if I can identify it in a video clip from Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail. The emphasis there will be arguments, and you've got an exercise that's going to go along with that where you try to pull the argument out and post it. Then there will be a video lecture that comes after it in which I will talk about arguments and some analytic reading as well. Next, you're going to read Plato's Apology and Plato's Allegory of the Cave, two of the most famous things ever written in philosophy, certainly had a massive impact, and there's going to be a video lecture with each of those. Finally, you're going to watch the movie Boyhood, and even if you've already seen it before, and this is the case with all of the movies in this course, I highly recommend you watch them again. I've got a list of questions that you'll be able to find on the movie response discussion board for Boyhood. I recommend that you look through those questions and that you think analytically and philosophically as you watch the film. It will be a new experience for you if you've not done this before, but certainly you will see things differently, thinking about it in terms of the frameworks, the principles, the ideas that we discussed in this class, and watching that film. After watching that film, you will write a response to it. Now, I'm going to end this welcome video with a thought experiment, a famous thought experiment in philosophy. Philosophers love thought experiments. You're going to see lots of them here this semester. And the reason why is because it helps us to isolate a given variable that we want to interrogate a little bit. And in this case, the philosopher's name was John Searle. He was a philosopher of language, did pragmatics and such. He was also an early critic of classical artificial intelligence. The computer scientists were saying, we're going to have robots that do what humans do very, very soon. And John Searle was out there saying, no, with what you're doing right now, robots will never do what humans do. If you want robots to do what humans do, you're going to have to do something very, very different than what you're doing. And to help them to see that, it's particularly talking about language, he came up with the Chinese room thought experiment. So here it is. Imagine yourself in a room. No windows, but there's a door, and in the door there are two slots, an in slot and an out slot. In through the in slot, you get discs every day, and on those discs are Chinese hieroglyphs. Now, you don't read Chinese. If you do read Chinese, pretend like you don't. Okay, so you get in through the in slot, a Chinese hieroglyph. Means nothing to you, right? It's just a bunch of symbols or pictures. Well, but there's a manual there. You go to the manual, you open up the manual, you flip through until you find that symbol. When you find that symbol that's on the disc, there's a corresponding symbol. Now, stacked throughout the whole room are piles of discs with Chinese hieroglyphs. And you go through and you find the Chinese hieroglyph that has the right corresponding picture that the manual told you you should use, and you take that and you put it through the out slot. Now, it's a terrible, bleak existence, and you're in this room for a very long time with nothing else to do. So pretty soon, guess what happens? You get really good at this game, right? Disc comes in through the in slot, you look at it, you don't even need to look at the manual, you don't need to search, you know right where to go to get the corresponding disc and put it through the out slot, and you do it like that. Now, the folks on the outside of the room, they don't know who's on the inside or what's on the inside. What might they assume about the person's understanding of Chinese? Well, if they're, say, asking questions on the discs that they put in, and then you're giving out intelligent, competent answers, they might well think that you are fluent in Chinese. But do you know Chinese? No, you don't have any idea, right? You recognize those discs. They're now meaningful to you in the sense that you know how to connect them with another symbol, but you don't have any idea what they mean or what they stand for. Now, why am I telling you about this thought experiment? Here's why I'm telling you about this thought experiment. Too often, our education is like that. Now, sometimes it has to be like that. Right? Sometimes you have too many demands and pressures on you, and you've just got to try to figure out how the symbols go together, how to manipulate them correctly, and convince your professor of your relative fluency. I've structured this class to try to make sure you can't do that. Right? This course will not be about symbol manipulation. You'll notice that there are no quizzes, there are no exams, there are no midterms, there are no finals. There's no period in which you're cramming to try to memorize symbols and how they go together. What there is your reading philosophy and your doing philosophy by analyzing the media around you and by writing it out. So if you couldn't understand what metaphysics was from my brief discussion, you couldn't figure out a metaphysical claim, that's going to be pretty apparent in the paper write-up that you did on the witch trial, or that you will do on the witch trial, right? It's going to be pretty clear. So don't go about this with what John Searle called syntactic competence, right? It's not about the syntax. It's not about the symbol manipulation. It's about the understanding.